saddest, don't like them, but I see you all the time. Big shit, saddest, don't like them, but I see you all the time. Big shit, saddest.
Welcome back to Clear the Cash. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @anoutragedjew. And of course, on every episode, and as I've said a million times, the brain behind everything is Jesse. You can find him on Twitter at planet_fatness. Jesse, we're going to jump right into this episode. You and I did a very long pre-show conversation, got ourselves warmed up, talked about lots of life stuff, talked about cards that are selling for exorbitant prices right now, found a card that is just one of the worst and most unfortunate purchases over the past couple months, which we'll get to towards the end of this episode. But Panini right now has releases coming out the yin yang. Is that the term? Is that what the kids are saying?
Wazoo could be.
Yeah, it's
apropos
out of
as
one of
well.
those.
Yeah.
And as you've appropriately put here in the show sheet, they're stacking Benjamins at the same time. Lots of money coming into Panini. What are some of the releases that are coming out right now, or some sets that we're looking ahead to?
It seems like, yeah, in the show sheet, I wrote down that they're stacking releases just like they're stacking Benjamins. Very true. So this past week, last week that we recorded, that was when 2020 NBA Prism released, which that had a whole ton of hype with LaMelo, even with the injury and him going down in a season-ending injury. That product had a ton of hype, and it still does right now. Honestly, that set's been kind of hit or miss because one of the more interesting cards of the set, Nate, I don't know if you've seen it or not, is the 2020 Prism LeBron card. And within a couple days after the set was released, I don't know if you've ever followed Burbank Cards on Instagram or on Twitter. It's probably one of the more famous card shops and long-running card shops in maybe the United States. Someone in the shop pulled the 2020 Prism LeBron black 1 of 1. I think it was like a black pulsar. Beautiful card. And then same week, I can't remember if it was in the same shop or somebody else posted on Instagram that they pulled the gold out of 10. And what's so cool about that card is that in the action shot, LeBron is paying a tribute to Kobe with the almost identical reverse windmill slam. So it was a very good and tasteful card for Panini to produce, especially with Kobe's death coming in very, very early on in 2020. And this is technically the 2020 basketball set. So it was a very nice tribute to Kobe. And then other cards, Panini's almost rightfully getting shit on. I don't know if you happen to take a look at the Kevin Durant Panini Prism for 2020, but I'm pretty sure the picture of him on the card is the same one that they used for 2019. I don't know if it was
Despicable.
2019 Prism, but it was several, like it was 10 plus sets from 2019. So they've gotten, it seems like they've gotten a little lazy on their photography. Even some, like, it's not just KD. All right, KD you can kind of rationalize away because he was injured all of 2019 and he's been injured for a lot of this year. So whatever, he hasn't been playing a whole lot, and you don't really want to picture him in his Warriors jersey from 2 or 3 years ago. So whatever, they just found some photography shoot with him with a ball in his hand and a Nets jersey on, whatever. But then you have some Zion cards that are the exact same from last year too, from other products that they used in 2020. So Panini probably has to step up their game with some of the photography for Prism, and probably a good amount of their basketball sets. I don't think we can say quite the same for football, but at least for basketball, they have a ways to go. But even just besides Prism, they just have sets coming out nonstop for at least the next couple of weeks. With this next week coming up, probably by the time that this episode is released, they have 2020 NFL National Treasures coming out, and that box is probably going to be the most expensive NFL National Treasures box released. It's going to be around like somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 per box. It's going to be going at, so just crazy prices. There's probably gonna be a lot of hits there, but there's it all depends on what type of cash you're looking to spend and what you're comfortable with losing if you buy and actually rip a whole box. But probably the biggest news and a big portion of what we're going to talk about today is that 2020 NFL Select actually released yesterday. So we're recording this episode on April 8th, so it released on the 7th, and it's been getting a ton of buzz, like a lot of buzz, even among people that really didn't collect Select before.
The National Treasure box that's going for 4,000 to 5,000. I mean, people that are interested in getting into that, I mean, they're going to have to search for potential box breaks. I mean, have you gotten into an NT box break before, or have you even looked into it? And if somebody was interested in getting involved in one of these, do you know what the typical buy-in is for somebody?
Unfortunately, no. I have never looked into an NT box break. The only high-end product that I purchased a spot in a break, and usually full transparency, I don't break too often just because, or I don't participate in breaks too often just because it's too much of a gamble for me. I'd much rather just purchase a slab and have it to sit on for a little bit before I can, flip it at some point, or maybe hold on to it for a good amount of time as a true investment. But the only high-end product that I've purchased a spot in a break is the one that you and I participated in a couple months back, like early on in the NFL season. I think it was 2019 NFL Immaculate, which, I mean, it was a higher end set, and it was, I think, even for that break, it cost around $52, something like that, if memory serves right. So NT is probably honestly going to go for more. The spots to get into breaks this year, they're going to be higher than they've ever been. I know that to be true for a fact, just because the boxes themselves are going to be going for $5,000 plus, and those are just the first boxes released. On the resale market, I have no idea how much they're going to go for. So yeah, it's gonna be pricier to break open National Treasures boxes and participate in some of those breaks.
I might never break a box of National Treasure ever in my life. I may never break one of those boxes. Who knows? I mean, it's going to have to incorporate a lot of people willing to spend some serious money. You did a break with us not too long ago, and you ended up with like the Jets and the Bills, and you're not going to want to pay $450 to once again get the Jets and the Bills, even though you did get an auto Le'Veon Bell card, which was great. But Jesse, you mentioned that This new Select set has been released since this show is airing. And as you wrote here, is Select really the Select set? I mean, we've talked about it on so many different episodes that we really do like this set. But has it lived up to the hype? Are we seeing sales of cards that are validating that other people have interest in it like we do?
I think this year, 2021, is going to be the first year where people truly realize how big Select is for the hobby as a set, and in terms of from both collectors and investors' perspectives. Investors have been they've been on it for really since the card market started booming, probably back in late 2019. But more and more people are getting in on it, and I'm seeing more hype behind 2021 or 2020 NFL Select than I've seen with Optic, and it's just about matching, if not surpassing, the Prism hype. And what's different about Select this year is we'll wait and see. I don't have quite the take. I'm sure I'll mention it later in the show, but it's retail this year, so you can actually I don't know how good of a chance you have unless if you camp out outside of a Target or a Walmart at 6 a.m. or 5 o'clock or 5 a.m. But you actually might be able to find that product on the shelves in Targets and Walmarts, and I don't know if Walgreens have them, other retail stores. Um, so the fact that people are going to be more and more aware and look for select in stores might actually provide like a short to intermediate term bump in the card's value. So just kind of running back onto explaining what exactly you're looking for in select and just kind of going into the set a little bit. There are actually three subsets within the whole set of select. So you have the concourse level, which is kind of like that's kind of the closest level to maybe like a prism base. So it's the base of all select base cards, the concourse and concourse silver. Then you have the premier level, so that's typically like 2 to 3 times more rare than the concourse. And this year they actually added a fourth set that's not quite as it's a little bit more rare than premier. It's called the club level. I have no idea what that set looks like. Hopefully it just, it looks just as nice as the rest of the sets, if not nicer than Premier and Concourse. And then you have field level. So field level has been the most respected out of all of the select subsets. Pretty much ever since select introduced the subsets. I think can't remember what year, 2014 or 2015. But I think the amount of subsets that you have within the product actually help make like it builds in scarcity and rarity. So whereas with Prism, you pretty much only have, besides the parallels, nobody really goes for that, like too many Prism inserts. Besides Prism Silver, you just have Prism Base, and that's really it. So you have like one level of Prism essentially. Whereas in Select, you have now 4 levels in Select. So you're building in scarcity and rarity in the product. Um, and we'll see what the impact is going to be on Select going retail this year. It's going to be broken more this year than it's ever been broken. I know that for a fact, just because more and more people like have access to it, and you don't just have to go into a hobby shop to be able to purchase it. If you're lucky enough to camp out outside of a Target and pick up a box.
Target has been one of these places that came out recently and said that they are going to start limiting the amount of products that are getting purchased because the shelves have been getting cleared out. I mean, people have been working with sellers at Target or shelf stockers that they know when to be there. They're clearing the shelves. So at this point now, Target has essentially shut it down and said you cannot buy more than 3 products. Whether they'll stand by that and regulate it, who knows? Because like you said, you're going to have long lines of people trying to jump in there and get that retail.
I'm seeing even with some of the local Targets close to me. I have a buddy that lives like 2 minutes away from me who I regularly converse with about cards, and he's more of like he's more of the retail hunter than I am. So he'll hit me up and say, "Oh, dude, I got this. I found this blaster box. Do you want one? Like they have 5 of them here or something." So he told me recently in the Target he goes to, they've actually put the boxes back behind the information desk or the help desk. So, which is, I think that's a smart move, and that's honestly probably as fair as it'll get, as long as you don't slip the cashier like $100 bill or something. So if they just they just give you the like they let you buy extra boxes. But I think in more and more Target and Walmarts, they're limiting purchases to, like you said, no more than 3 boxes. The one close to my house, Target close to my house, you can only buy 1 per person. So I don't know if there's going to be more and more, if you're going to see more families and probably unhappy wives that are considering leaving their husbands because they're making him wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to camp outside of a Target just to get an extra box of Select. But we'll see kind of what happens with the prices for not the product as a whole, just because I think the product as a whole's prices are going to go up. It depends on for how long. So I think Concourse is going to be seen as more on like a 1-to-1 ratio with Prism Base. Or I don't know if it'll quite ever get there, but it'll get close. So that subset will be seen as close to a prism base as possible. And then the premier level will probably be a pretty decent intermediate level hold, just because it's people have their own opinions of whether or not it looks nicer than a concourse. All that really matters, honestly, is that it's just more rare. So if something is 3 times more rare than the most common set, it's gonna help the product, and people, investors and flippers are gonna pay attention to that as well, and they're gonna pay attention to pop counts. So as long as those pop counts stay relatively low, whenever PSA opens their doors back up, or more and more people grade with BGS and all the other companies, people are going to be paying attention to premier level prices and pop counts. And then club is kind of in the same tier as premier, where it's kind of an intermediate level hold and buy and sell, whereas field level is probably, honestly, the safest long-term play, especially if you can get your hands on a good conditioned field level silver or other parallels within that subset. Field level is going to be it's for the most part it's field level silver PSA 10s. They've long surpassed prism based PSA 10s. They're on their way to reaching prism silver PSA 10 territory.
I mean, we saw that with those
right
Kylers that we purchased not too long ago. And it'll be interesting. I know a lot of people are excited about this select set. I mean, we've certainly pushed it. I've bought a multitude of cards in this set and avoided some others. The optic set has looked a lot better too. There's been some nice products that have come out of there as well. But it will be interesting, like you said, to see sort of what the long term is here. But are there some other sets, some older sets that you feel like people should still be targeting or looking at when they identify select?
Absolutely. So, guys, we mentioned that this show, a good amount of this show is pretty select centric, just because it's my favorite set out of any of the big 3 or 4. So, I'm very intrigued and impressed by the amount of enthusiasm behind the release this year and people being able to find it in retail. So I think this is going to have pretty big implications for the hobby and for, what Panini sets to target in general. And I've been a Select fan since I got back into the hobby. And one of my plays, I try to at least incorporate one play a week. My play this week is to target, or at least take a look at, 2012 and 2013 NBA Select for some of our NBA collectors and investors, and 2013 NFL Select. The reason why I am targeting those sets is because, so in those years, Select didn't have like field level premier concourse, or for basketball they didn't have courtside. So like they just had a base card. It was just a base silver. From that sense, it's a good set. Just even if you're just looking at the base cards, but their inserts for those 2 years are just insane. So 2013 was the first year that NFL Select came, whereas it was supposed to be released in 2012. I can't remember what happened, but in 2012 for NBA, they produced both Prism and Select. So the insert that I'm going to be looking at for both NBA and NFL, it's called Select Hot Rookies. So, and that's for 2012 NBA, 2013 NFL, and then 2013 NBA. They released, they did away with Select Hot Rookies, and they came out with basically an insert set called Red Hot Rookies. So basically, it's more or less the same thing. But the reason I'm looking at these sets and inserts as a play is just the sheer difference in price and PSA 10 pop reports between Prism and Select Hot Rookies. So I just have like 5 or 6 examples between NBA and NFL of guys that are seriously underpriced in terms of the Select Hot Rookie set. So in 2012, the 3 guys I'm going to be looking at are Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, and Damian Lillard, arguably probably the 3 biggest rookies within the 2011-2012 Prism and Select set. Anthony Davis's Prism base PSA 10's pop count is over 1,300. It's almost 1,400 right now. And it honestly, if they're pretty decent raw cards right now, that pop report might be even approaching 1,500 one day and maybe getting to 2,000. The last sale of the AD Prism base PSA 10 sold for just under $2,000 on April 6th, whereas the AD Select Hot Rookies PSA 10 from 2012, that pop report compared to 1366, the pop report is 16, which is just over, it's like just over 1% of the Prism pop report. That card, and the pop report's low, so there's not too many sales within the last 3 or 4 months. That card sold for $500 on January 16th compared to $2,000 for the Prism base. So the cost of that card is 25% of AD's Prism base. And we see it with the other guys. Kawhi Leonard, his Prism base PSA 10 pop count is over 1,000, last sold for almost $2,700 a couple days ago. His Select Hot Rookies PSA 10, Pop 44, which is 4% of the Prism pop count. Last sale went for $495 on April 7th, which is less than 20% of the Prism base cost. And then we look at Dame Lillard. I know he's one of your personal favorite athletes out of Portland. He's honestly a guy that I want to collect. Him and Kawhi, I honestly have to collect more of both of them. His Dame's Prism base PSA 10 has a slightly lower pop. It's just over 800, so it's a relatively rare card. That last sale went for just over $1,600, whereas the Select Hot Rookies PSA 10, that pop is 28, so 3.5% of the Prism pop. Last sold for $760, which is less than half of the cost of the Prism base PSA 10. And I know 2012 is a big year. A lot of people are going to reference 2012 for basketball, especially Prism. I honestly don't know if even this insert is ever going to surpass Prism prices. But if you guys look at this set from a collectability standpoint, a scarcity standpoint, how nice the card itself actually looks, which is something that I've been learning more and more. And I appreciate the physical look of the card now more than I ever have. And I think this set might honestly surpass Prism one day. That sounds like a bold take, but I don't know if it's really that bold. And just with the discrepancy between the pop reports and the prices, it seems so underpriced. I know people, card analysts now say, player X is underpriced or this set is underpriced, probably more often than they should say it. But with this set, I truly feel that these prices, they shouldn't be 25% of what a Prism based PSA 10 is with the pop count over 1,000, and this pop is like 30 to 40. And I think with the select appreciation that's about to come, and we're starting to see already with 2020 NFL Select, I think more and more people are just going to go back to 2012 NBA Select and 2013 for NFL, and they're gonna start scooping up those cards, and they're gonna look at the collectability of those cards, and people are gonna like what they like, and they're gonna see that these sets look really nice. They look very clean. They're very unique. I don't think Panini's made anything else like a Select Hot Rookie ever since like 2013, 2014, something like that. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, even 2013. So those are the 2012 examples, but we even see it in 2013. I'll only give two different athlete examples here. So the prime of that class, I guess the best player of the 2013 class, of course, Giannis. His Prism-based PSA 10, that pop report is over 2,500. I think before the card boom, it was less than 2,000. We've already graded a card that's 8 years old. We've gotten 500 or 600 more PSA 10s in that time, which is a little scary, honestly. So that pop report might honestly climb even more. That card last sold for $3,450 on April 6th, whereas his Red Hot Rookie from Select PSA 10, which has a pop count of 24, compared to over 2,500, so less than 1% of the Prism base PSA 10 pop. That card sold for $1,800, so it's not as great of a deal as the 2012 set, but it's still just 52% of the Prism base PSA 10 cost. And even for football, I think people are going to start going towards early select in football and seeing when you see guys like DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce in that set, people are going to get excited, especially with their Hall of Fame trajectory level play. 2013's Prism base PSA 10 for Hopkins, that was a pop 91, so it's a low pop. That the Prism base is already a low pop, but that last sale went for $350 a couple days ago. The Select Hot Rookies PSA 10 for Hopkins, there are 10 total graded cards of Hopkins in this insert set. It last sold for right around $200. So again, not as big of a discrepancy, but I'm honestly, I see promise in this because when I got into the hobby, this was like that Hopkins Select Hot Rookies, that was a $75 to $100 card. And now it's a little over $200. Whereas the Prism fluctuates just like, any other card in the off season and the hype of the preseason and as soon as the season starts. So that card's been kind of bouncing back and forth in the range that it's been in the last year and a half or so. But I'm seeing a more healthy, steady increase in the Select Hot Rookies. And I think for Hopkins, it's only a matter of time before his Select Hot Rookie PSA 10 surpasses his Prism base. And if something like that is already happening in football, I think it's only a matter of time before it starts happening in basketball.
I think those are really good options for people. I mean, they're clearly guys that have Hall of Fame trajectory, every single one of them. And you mentioned it earlier in the show, and we've talked about it on podcasts in the past. Those are ultra rare just purely on pop counts, and they're not nearly the price of basically their competition in a sense. So for people looking to invest into cards that have an incredible ceiling and people that want to invest in players that are a absolute guarantee at this point in their career, those are all good options. I mean, another name was Keenan Allen. He's a player that I grabbed one of the hot rookies of a couple of months back too. An interesting name, not quite on the level of DeAndre Hopkins, but I think also Keenan Allen's really never gotten the respect that he deserved. I think if he's been healthy his whole career, his numbers would be even more impressive. But we talk so much on this show about quarterbacks, right? We're often banging the table for quarterbacks. We talked about Matt Stafford before Stafford was traded. We said go collect Darnold before Darnold got traded. We're on Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's too expensive now. So for the people that don't want to invest in quarterbacks or they don't want to pay up for Lamar Jackson right now at $1,500, even though that card could grow another $1,200, $1,500 itself, what are some non-quarterback names that people can invest in? Some off the top of your head that you think would be good players to grab a stake in.
The reason I wanted to talk about this on the show is because I've gotten plenty of DMs on both Instagram and Twitter where people ask me, "Oh, what's a quarterback that you think hasn't really appreciated since the season ended, and who do you like?" And you think they have a good amount of room to appreciate by the time the season starts, or week one they have a 5 touchdown game or something. And I've gotten so many of these messages that I wanted to do some research myself into seeing how exactly investable, or even for like a short-term investment, how good of an investment skill position players are. And I think there's quite a bit of money to be made, and people are still overlooking them. I think 2021 is going to be probably one of the most, if not the most historic year in the hobby, where, especially from a football perspective, because NBA is king. It's probably always going to be king, but NFL hasn't seen the run up that I think it will. And I think the prices that we're going to see for NFL cards in the late summer of 2021 are going to be just astronomical compared to what we've been seeing in the past. So I think that honest to God, I think that applies to skill position players as well as quarterbacks, just because we've already seen it before with certain skill position players, and not even certain ones. There was a price run up in 2020 as well. So I came up with 6 names here. I came up with 3 running backs and 3 wide receivers. I wanted to kind of have two guys from each skill position as controls, as kind of like a top 5 dynasty asset, and as a running back or a wide receiver, and then just somebody random. Still good, still young, but more speculative, more it's, I guess, more borderline prospecting. So the players I wanted to look at are Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. For my more speculative play, I chose Josh Jacobs for running back, and then wide receiver, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, and the more speculative play was AJ Brown. So for Saquon, his rookie Prism Silver PSA 10, which has a ridiculously low pop count of 23. So if you're able to scoop that up, that actually might not be that bad of a purchase right now. It sold 4 times on eBay between June and August of 2020. It sold for as low on June 3rd as $550, then sold for $1,500 in late August. So that card 3x'd within a 2.5 month time frame. If you don't want to spend up for Prism Silver PSA 10 and you're thinking, oh, maybe the Prism base might be worthwhile, but I don't know if I'll see quite the same returns from a percentage perspective. Honestly, we actually saw a greater return on the Prism base PSA 10 than the Prism Silver, which is insane to think about and say out loud. So the Prism base is far more populous and plentiful than the Silver. The Silver's pop count was 23. The base's pop count is a little over 700. It sold over 100 times between June 18th and September 3rd, which was essentially opening day of the season if you don't count the Thursday night game. It sold for as low as $92 on June 18th. And then on September 13th, opening day of the season, it sold for $435, which is the price basically 5x'd. Then we have our next great young running back, Christian McCaffrey. His Prism Silver PSA 10, we don't really have a base to compare it to because we've mentioned plenty of times on this show, 2016 and 2017 football. Silver was essentially the base, so that's really his only main Prism rookie card. That has quite a relatively high pop count, just under 800. It sold 96 times between mid-June and late August. On June 17th, it sold for $150, and it peaked at almost $900 on August 28th. Within a 2-month time frame, it almost 6x'd. And if you don't want to, if you kind of want to stay away from Prism, like, oh, Jesse, you're mentioning Prism so many times, are there other sets? Can you mention another set that maybe we could have seen returns like this in the past? Well, we can. So the McCaffrey Optic Holo PSA 10 has honestly might be just a play in general. Even right now, I haven't looked at the prices, but it's just about 7 times more rare than the Prism Silver PSA 10. So its pop count is a little over 100. It sold 20 times between late May and early September. On May 24th, it sold for $140. And on September 11th, it sold for over $800. Again, another 6x in the price. And for my kind of experimental play for maybe somebody who wasn't as highly touted last year, I looked at Josh Jacobs. And I think with the interesting case with Jacobs is people were obviously dynasty players were seeing him as more of an RB1 in dynasty last year, and some may honestly still. But I think the move to Las Vegas really did help his market a little bit. So no pun intended, but the Vegas money came in and on his cards, and between July 12th and September 14th, That card, his Prism Base PSA 10, which has a pop of over 500, sold 66 times on eBay. It sold for as little as $76 in mid-July, and then 2 months later, sold for $290, almost a 4x increase. Then going to the wide receivers, we had Michael Thomas, who just had an absolutely insane price run-up, not unlike McCaffrey's. His Prism Silver PSA 10 sold for $150 in mid-June, and 3 months later, on opening day of the season, sold for $865, another almost 6x increase in price. And his Opticalo PSA 10, which has a crazy low pop of 20, sold for $160 in late May, and in early September sold for $700. So 4.5x run up. Hopkins Prism Base PSA 10 between June and September sold 9 times. In early June, it sold for $80. Then 3 months later, it sold for $600. So 7.5x increase. And my more speculative play, which is very apropos today, I put on his jersey just to
right,
just to let the common people know that I am PCing AJ Brown. So if you guys have any interesting AJ Brown slabs out there, I'm listening. AJ Brown's Prism Base PSA 10 rookie, which has a pop of 237, sold 22 times between mid-June to early September, sold for as little as $40 on June 11th, then sold for $300 on September 1st, an increase of 7.5x. So if you're thinking, if people are just too fixated on quarterbacks, honestly, if you're looking at this from strictly a financial perspective, and even if you want these flips and gains to maybe purchase some guys that you're legitimately looking to collect at some point, in your time in the hobby, I don't see a problem with any of these plays. And like I said, I think this summer in the NFL, we're going to see the price run-ups this year are going to be something that we've never seen before in football.
And those are all impressive names. I mean, they're all players that either have suffered injury, have become aged. AJ Brown, of course, of all those names, is sort of the most ascending. And Saquon coming back and Christian McCaffrey coming back. So I think there's a lot of upside. There was a lot of suppression based on injuries, and we're now looking at a rebound on players that even in Dynasty should be considered players that you want to actively own everywhere because they're just flat out good, and they're going to also flat out be massive parts of the offenses that they're a part of. Again, A.J. Brown at this point is the sole weapon. Jonnu Smith is gone. Corey Davis is gone. Can only mean great things. Everybody was concerned about Michael Thomas. He's going to get his targets, irrespective of who's there. DeAndre Hopkins is still going to get his targets no matter what. Josh Jacobs, questionable situation, but that's why his price probably is where it is right now. He still offers a ton of upside. So I love all those names, Jesse. And anybody that bought those is guaranteed to find upside in the future and be happy with it. It's the people that make purchases that turn and go straight down the toilet bowl days after the purchase. They're the ones that get this sick feeling in the pit of their stomachs. And Jesse, Jimmy Garoppolo, not too long ago, looked like he had made it out unscathed. Wasn't necessarily the quarterback that we were promised. I've never been a fan of Garoppolo, but at least dynasty owners had a sense of, okay, I may have a starting quarterback for some portion of the year next year. And then some trades went down, and suddenly San Francisco is sitting at the number 3 pick in the upcoming NFL draft, where we know there are 5 very good quarterbacks. Adam Schefter is certain that this selection is going to be Mac Jones, which is weird because at this point it sounds like it's going Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and then Mac Jones. So Justin Fields is going to slip by them.
Jesus.
Nonetheless, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But what makes even less sense to me is that on February 26th, somebody got a very, very, very wild hair up their ass and decided that they were going to submit a best offer of $35,000 for a one-of-one National Treasures Jimmy Garoppolo laundry tag auto, BGS 95. $35,000. And about a month later, Jimmy Garoppolo was absolute dust. So the question is, if you're the guy that owns this, number one, have you since taken the longest shower cry of all time? And number two, are you just hoping that Jimmy Garoppolo goes back to New England?
So they're actually crying
They
in the
have to
shower
be.
as we speak. There's no other way to go about it. We cheated a little bit this week just because yes, this purchase was a little over a month ago, but usually we try to have a segment where the purchases are a little bit more recent, and we just try to point out how outrageous they are. But it's a little more. It wasn't the best purchase to begin with, even before the San Francisco trade up in the draft, and now it because the risk was always there, and Jimmy G isn't really anything all that special. But even if you're thinking, okay, like the one silver lining here is maybe, just maybe, Bill is thinking of concocting some sort of a trade to get him back into New England. But even if that happens, do you really think that there is some rich New England sports card investor who's willing to put up $50K for any Jimmy G card?
No. Jimmy Garoppolo has been, and was dead. It was over for Jimmy Garoppolo. He's got the good looks, and that's where it stops, okay? And we knew it. And even if he goes back to New England, there will be no resurgence. He was a guy that had almost no proven on-field production. Everybody said that we had seen enough. Then he goes to San Francisco. They thought that they got a winner. Clearly, he wasn't even better than Nick Mullins at times. And now this guy that spent $35,000 on a card, unless it was Jimmy Garoppolo himself who bought this card, that's an automatic L. And there's no way that number one, he wasn't going to get that money back anyways. Even if Garoppolo miraculously pulled off a Super Bowl win, that card is never worth $35,000. What's the most expensive Nick Foles purchase of all time? That's his ceiling. There's just no way, right, that this card ever had any real value because he's a stopgap quarterback. That's all this is. So if I'm this guy, I am sick to my stomach by the trade that went down. And at this point, I mean, how much are you willing to take a loss on this card? Because there is that was the absolute ceiling. Like, he set the ceiling like 15 grand too high, 25 grand too high on this card, right? I mean, really, this card, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a BGS 9.5, it was a 1/1, it was an auto. I mean, this card to me was like a $2,900 card.
I don't think this card should have gone for more than four figures. I've seen cards, we're all interested in really high dollar cards from time to time. We'll find some gems or I guess overpriced diamonds in the rough, but this card was probably purchased for 10 times the amount that it should have gone for, really almost at its high point. I mean, maybe like you can kind of, if you backtrack it a little bit, and maybe in the Super Bowl, if Jimmy G connected on that throw and somehow the Niners pulled it out, like maybe he would actually have a market on his cards. But there is no way in hell you can get back to even money, to even getting back what you put in for it. Whoever bought this card.
Short of being independently wealthy. I mean, I'm sure this guy's an NFT collector as well. It just seems like a parallel level of decision making. Maybe he's the guy that bought the Fortnite card. I don't know, Jesse. The point is, if you're trying to find a good way to lose a lot of money fast, it's investing in quarterbacks that were absolutely fragile to begin with, and then spending an exorbitant amount of money just months before the draft. I mean, that's like the stupidest thing you can do. I'm not going out and spending $50,000 on X quarterback that's absolutely replaceable. I mean, that is like one of the most critical, piss poor decisions in the history of card spending. And in my opinion, this guy's sitting on, a $35,000 piece of fire starter now.